The Yachts for Sale podcast is powered by the MarineMax Superyacht division. With the Fraser and Northrop & Johnson brokerage companies in the MarineMax family, they can offer the best possible service to find you the yacht that you're looking for or to sell the yacht you currently own, no matter the size. In today's podcast, I speak with a legend of the yacht brokerage industry, Annie Avery. One of the very few female yacht brokers in the world, she has a vast wealth of experience in selling all kinds of yachts to all kinds of clients. During the conversation, we discussed Annie's passion for sailing yachts. She talked me through the gorgeous Jonghert sailing yacht Joie de Mer that we were sitting on. She told me of a fascinating feature that's a trademark of that builder. And then the conversation took a fascinating turn as she opened up about her observations of human society in the lens of the activity of sailing yachts. I started by asking her about her affiliation with sailing yachts.
I think people know me also for sail because I captained sailboats and only sailboats, right? So, and I captained one of the beautiful classic boats, Sirocco, Errol Flynn's boat, and I've captained an aluminum boat.
Sorry, you captained Errol Flynn's boat?
Yeah, Sirocco.
Did you meet Errol Flynn?
No, he was dead by
He was long dead because he's like early 1900s.
He owned it, I think, in 38, right? And he owned it for only 5 years.
Yeah.
But the boat was built in 1929.
Wow.
Right? And she's still living as Karenica.
Wow.
Yeah.
And was that a charter yacht or was it private
Well,
yacht?
we did charter it. Yeah. All the boats that I ran, except for the very last one, were chartered. The last one was Buzzy D. She was an 85-foot maxi cruiser that Martin Francis designed. And I ran that with my boyfriend at the time, and we had 2 other crew. So that was the last boat that I ran. But so I've had really broad experience. Of course, when I was doing it, a big sailboat was, I remember when one of the first 60s came in, right? 60 Ocean came in. It was like, oh, look at that boat. Besides all the big ones like Creole and some of those older, beautiful, more classic boats, but the ones that were being produced new, that was big. And now look what's happened.
And I think that brings a lot to the table for a yacht broker because, and again, we'll look at this yacht in a moment, but when I was walking up the dock and then Slava and I set foot on board and we were like, oh my word, this would be such a great yacht to cruise the world. And so then I went on a flight of fantasy about cruising the world, who I'd take with me, who I wouldn't. And I thought, actually, Annie's the person I would ask. Irrespective of whether you'd sold me the yacht or not. I'd say, Annie, what would I need to know if I want to cruise the world on a yacht like this? What advice would you give to me?
Well, I think a person who buys a yacht to go around the world needs a world globetrotter. They need a boat that is built to do that. Because there are all different reasons that boats are built and that people have. Some of them are for racing, much more of that, and they're not meant to take heavy seas, things like that. But this boat was meant to be able to cruise coastally, normally, in the Med, if that's what you want to do, or to go around the world for sure.
Nice.
And so they have various things that really make it possible and comfortable. So anybody looking to go really around the world, it's partly that, and partly that you have not only a good sailing boat to take all the seas, but that you also have a really beautiful, comfortable place to live. Because that's what you're really doing. You have a home on the water. It's really a life on the water. So you want to be sure that when you're sitting like we're sitting now, how comfortable this is. And over there you have another table just like it. There's ease for the crew here. Very comfortable. And then also down below, you have protected steering, you have outside steering, you have those kind of things that give you flexibility for living and for long range and for comfort. When it's really stormy, you can drive from in here and be able to see and be able to navigate. So it's a really, that kind of flexibility can be important too. But I think it's really important to also love what you have. Because then you take care of it. You want to be on it. So I would also really check in emotionally what you like, what just speaks to you, what boat speaks to you to go around the world and be your home.
Because you've got to wake up every day.
Yes.
and be surrounded
Yeah.
by it.
And actually, so much of the time when you're actually cruising around the world is not actually sailing, unless you're trying to race around the world or do an arc race or something like that. Because a lot of the time is anchored in a harbor and you're going to land to find out what it's like and go to see a dance in Bora Bora and explore and go to volcanoes and all the different things. Of the reason you cruise is to know the land, not just the water. I mean, that's the glory of a boat, is that you get both. You get both worlds.
Yeah.
And you don't have to pick up and pack and go get a taxi and fly to someplace. It's so seamless. It's so wonderful if somebody can
What
do it.
about preparations? If I was seriously going to cruise the world, what sort of preparation would I need to think about?
Well, you want to be sure all your systems are in order, or that they can become in order when you get to certain places. Like New Zealand, you might do a refit or something if you're going around the world. But basically, I think of 5 big categories for sailboats. One is the rig. Has it been out? Has it been tuned and tested and surveyed?
Yeah.
This one, for example, was just out in 23. So it's had its 5 year. Somebody has years to go before they should just take it out from a regular maintenance point of view.
What do they do? They just
They unstep. They take out everything.
Yeah.
And they test everything. And then if there's a weakness in one of the shrouds or something, or part of it, depending on what kind of a rig you have, if it's continuous or not, or rod rigging or cable, you do different things. But basically, it's a qualified rigger checking to be sure that you're good to go. And then they write a report to say that you should be good basically for the next 5 years, for example. So the rig is one. The paint on the outside, that maintenance is another one. And in our case, for example, both the superstructure and the hull were painted. The hull in 21 and the superstructure in 22. So the whole thing's been painted. And that'll usually last at least 5 years, maybe more, especially with a lighter color. Could be 7, depends on how you take care of it, which is important, right?
Yeah.
You need to get the crystals off and wash your boat so that you don't get deterioration there with the paint. But so that's another one. And then the decks are another one, that they're in basically good shape. They're cosmetic, so that's a little bit different, but it can be a big ticket item on a boat. And then also your interior and also your machinery.
So you're talking about preparations with regard to the actual yacht, aren't you? You're like thinking about, is something going to break halfway across the ocean?
Right. Or if you need to do a big refit before you go.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's the case. Oh, you have this in front of you. And some people, when they're buying, they don't want to do that, or they're willing to do it. But in our case, again, we're ready to go.
Yeah. Because I was talking to Slava as we were walking around, and I said to him, because you'd have to make sure you have enough money to pay a crew of 3 to 4 in the case of this yacht. And he said, I take my friends. So Slava was thinking about saving money using his friends. I was thinking about paying a crew. But I guess it's a pretty hazardous thing to take friends unless they've got a lot of experience in sailing, I would imagine.
You know, people are all different. And also with something like this, a person can buy it and have no sailing experience, right? I mean, you have a crew.
Yeah.
Right? And a boat like this should have a crew, actually. And depending on how much, as an owner, you actually would want to participate, you might have one less crew or something like that. Also depends on how formal you are with your living. You know, if you want the crew to come in and make your bed every day, but if you want really your private space, just so long as you're safe when you take off and everything's stowed, that's different. So it really depends on the person. And we have such high standards in the yachting business. But not everybody that cruises necessarily has to have that about how they cruise and that sort of thing. But we are at that high yachting standard.
You're talking about standards in terms of cuisine on board, the level of cleanliness.
Yes, and the level of maintenance and that sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah. So, but there are lots of
See how we think differently. I'm thinking of food. You're thinking of maintenance.
There are things that are different for people. So it's really important for a buyer to check in and to think of what the priorities are for that person. And there are 100 ways to get into the harbor. There's not only one way ever. So it's really to line up what are the priorities and what's going to do the job. And usually nothing's absolutely perfect. But if there's one thing that is the deal maker, that the rest just goes out the window.
So what I'm picking up from this is that just hypothetically, somebody sells their business for $10 million, which these days doesn't even make the news, does it? You've got to sell your business for $500 million before anybody's interested in it. Lots of people are selling businesses for the 10, 20, $30 million mark. And I think to myself, I'm going to take $4 million and I'm going to buy this yacht and I'm going to use the rest of the money to cruise the world for as long as I possibly can. What I'm getting from what you're saying is it would be a very wise thing to have a captain who understands the maintenance procedures, preventive maintenance, as well as being able to actually physically put an itinerary together to cruise the world. Would that be right?
Yes, and then I also think it's really nice if you're going to cruise the world to have somebody on board, an engineer or the captain, who really knows how to fix things. And you're not relying on professionals like sometimes we do in the yachting charter business to be fixing your things, because that can also give you flexibility and a sense of safety if they're knowledgeable about that kind of thing. But you can certainly find that in the yachting industry.
Yeah. So captain,
crew.
Somebody who's good with engineering, and I guess a stewardess who's also able to help with the lines and the sailing and...
Right. So a normal crew of 4 for this would be, for example, could be a captain mate, and one of them would be good in engineering, or a captain engineer. And then you have a stewardess chef. So a chef and a stewardess, and again, if you're a family just cruising around, you might not care at all about high-level cuisine, and maybe the person that you get is a cook. Yeah. And maybe you share some of the cooking or something like that. So again, it really depends.
Do you get involved in recommending crew for yachts?
Well, Northrop & Johnson does, yes. Yeah. And of course, we know people, and so yes, we do to a certain extent, but we really rely a lot on our great people that we have around the world. Actually, Northrop & Johnson has a great sailboat team in Antibes. And so, yes, and then Marcy here has her own team also, so we rely on that. And then just the coconut telegraph is a good way too.
The coconut telegraph?
The coconut telegraph, yeah, like who's looking. Especially in this world, especially in the sailing world. I have a couple of captains that I have a really close relationship with, and I say, you know, any of those young nippers that are looking for this kind of a job or something like that.
And here's
so we're very sharing about that kind of information.
I really want to ask you this question because I really get the romantic notion of sailing. I get a lot more excited when I visit a sailboat than a motor yacht, even though I'm far more of a motor yacht person. But the thing that puts me off is they always seem to be under motor, under power, and not under sail. Is that true, do you think, or is that just... Yes, I see that they seem to be under power a lot.
Where do you see them? Are you seeing them in the harbor coming into the dock?
Well, no, I know that... No, I just... it's just an observation when I'm out at sea and I see a sailing yacht going by. Often it seems to be under power. Take La Joie, for example. How much wind do you need to be able to get the sails up?
Well, this is a really special Jonghert because she doesn't need all that much to get it up. She's a very excellent sailor in light wind sails.
Right.
So you can be registering 10 or 12 on your B&G and be going that according to your meters also. So this boat happens to be that way. But again, it really depends on what the boat was designed for. You can have a motor sailor or a goulette, for example, that comes from Turkey, and those have much different sailing abilities and qualities in actual performance. So that depends. So it'll depend on what the boat's designed for, what sails you have up, what's a possibility. It can just depend on if somebody feels like doing it or not. I mean, one of the good things about a sailing boat that we have now, and like this one, is you can sail or motor.
Yeah. You
have a choice. So you don't have to sit out in the doldrums. If you're in the middle of the doldrums in the Pacific, you don't have to just sit there, right? Yeah. You can power through that and then put up your sails again.
Right, and on a yacht like this, how many days could you do that for?
Oh, I'm not sure. We'd have to check with the captain what the exact autonomy is for that. And it isn't exactly days, it's of course how many hours you can run, that sort of thing. So, but but it's pretty substantial. So obviously you have to regulate that and maintain that. Make sure that you're on target with not running out of fuel. But the good news is, if you run out of fuel, you do have sails. So you have that other power source, that natural power source, which is great.
So let's talk for a moment about la joie de mer.
De mer, oui, c'est ça.
Which means?
Joy of the sea.
Joy of the sea. Is it sea or seas? I suppose it's sea, isn't it?
La mer is sea.
Singular, yeah. One engine, I guess.
Yes.
Single screw.
Yeah.
See, I know the technical term.
Yeah. Well, sometimes they have two. They can have, if they have a centerboard or something, they can have two.
Some of the really bigger sailing yachts.
I know it can be smaller ones too. It's just, again, how the underbody is designed, which will dictate sometimes that you have two instead of one.
So imagine that I was that buyer, potential buyer, and we've just walked up the dock, as we just have, and I just sold my business for, I'm not going to say 10 million, I'm going to say 200 million, but I just want to put that chunk of money aside to buy a yacht. What would you show me? What would you tell me about this particular yacht?
So as we're coming up to the boat, the first thing I would draw your attention to is her transom, which opens, and it can be a platform for getting on and off your tender, for swimming, for many things, water access. And it's also, with the help of a crane that's on the side of the transom, the place where you put the tender into the garage. And we actually deflate the pontoons a little bit, and then it comes in. But that's fantastic because you have a very clear deck then. And the other thing about La Joie de Mer, which is unusual, no other boat has it quite like this, is that the original owner who built the boat, he wanted it to be a performance boat that could do the bucket, and he also wanted very clean decks.
Just tell me what do the bucket is for the benefit of those that don't know.
Do the buckets means that he'd sail in the Corinthian races that are around the world. The first one was Nantucket bucket, which started in Nantucket, and then many years ago. And of course now they have a very famous St. Bart's bucket, which is in March. They have another, we call all of these kind of slang buckets, even though they might not officially be named that. But there's a big boat race also in Palma usually at the end of June. So and sometimes there are various ones staged depending on what's happening there. Like when there's an America's Cup, there's a special boat. There's a special race for the boats that are there, the big sailboats that are there watching. And really, I say big, but in a way, I think that most of them now are just anything over 24 meters is considered a super yacht. So you have different divisions, that sort of thing. But the original owner wanted to build the boat so that it was a good cruiser, but also great for Corinthian racing. And so one of the things to follow up with the idea of the garage holding the tender and not being on the deck is that, well, let me back up a minute. It doesn't have to be on the deck. You do have chocks in case you want to just pop it up there for some reason as you're going someplace else. But actually, it's meant to be stored there. So that clears the deck of the tender. Then on the other end of the boat, there is no anchor visible because the anchor in this boat is a submarine anchor.
Oh.
Right. So it's never visible from the deck, and it's built into the hull. So it comes up into the hull and then is part of the hull format. And then when you release it, it comes straight down from the bottom of the boat. So you never see it. Actually.
Now, if I was a buyer, I'd want to know, is that not more difficult for maintenance? If something goes wrong, is it more difficult to repair?
No, not actually. I mean, you take it out, you have to take it out, but you're pulling your boat out anyway. But it's not particularly more. You have to watch to be sure that it, comes up straight, but you do that anyway when it's coming over the bow. And
now I'm curious about that also because I know that when people are lifting the anchor, there's always somebody looking over the bow, and they're kind of almost counting it down. How do you do that if it's...
Okay. So there's a glass window, so people can be in the lazarette, and they're looking to be sure how things are coming down, and there's a viewing window, so they can view it from there.
How cool is that?
Yeah. So anyway, it's another feature that keeps the deck clear, and then on top of that, they have cleats that recess, and then they'll pop up when you need to use them. And they also have, really not very common, they have the turnbuckles, for example, recessed, and also the hydraulic part of your sails, for example, those are also recessed partly. They're not totally hidden, but you'll just see it when we walk. You'll see that they're so it's so clean. Everything's so clean, and then you have a captive winch for your main. So it's a very tidy, very clean, calm feeling boat on deck, which is nice. So that's one of the main things, and as far as how to buy. And then the other thing about the boat is, again, when the original owner bought it, he had a carbon mast because that makes it lighter. It's the newest type. He did a conventional rig because that gives you the highest performance, so you've got reef lines and things like that, but very easy to do. The crew has no problem doing that. So you've got an original carbon rig, carbon mast and boom, and then you also have where he redesigned, the original owner tweaked the actual underbody a little so that he modified it and made it so she sailed a little bit faster and a little bit better in lighter winds. And this is why this owner had her, because he sailed in Maine where there were a lot of light winds, and he just loved it, that it didn't deter you. I mean, it could be blowing, it could be registering on your B&G, it could say 10, and they'd go out and have a great time. It didn't have to blow 15 or 20 or something like that.
The current owner knows his stuff when it comes to sailing yachts.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. He has various, and he's based on his little boat.
Right, because when you said he altered the rig or something to make it go a little bit faster, I was like, how did he
this
even know how to do
No, that's not this owner.
That's the previous owner.
That was the original owner.
Right.
And we are the third owner, I believe.
Right.
Yeah.
So the original owner too must have really known his stuff.
Oh, yes, sure, sure. And so, but anyway, that's part of the fun and learning how to enhance things or keep working for what you want and what to get. So, and
sorry, carry on.
Okay, so then that would be kind of the outside things to know. And then, of course, you've got your two wheels back there, which make it really nice. And then you've got your interior steering here, which is great. And one of the things about this interior steering that's so good is you have great visibility, because a lot of the modern boats have the upper salon and lower salon contiguous with each other, but they're down a little. And so actually your eye view when you're sitting at the helm is like a deck level.
Yes.
And that's different than this, where you're actually your feet are at deck level and your eye is over that. So that's good. And again, that's a safety feature in a sense, you know, that you can be navigating and doing things from in here. And so in our model, our situation, we have the helm over here to starboard, and then on the other side you have a bar, which is really nice for out here, and then a little jump seat if somebody wants to accompany you on the other side, right? And then the other thing that I love about this cockpit is that these windows come down. The window right behind you comes down, and the other side does too. And you can enclose the whole thing with, the back part is a kind of a tarpaulin type of very heavy duty plastic. But so you can be nice and cozy in here and it blowing, 35, 50 outside. And you can be nice and warm and just adjust to what kind of weather you're in. It's really a great all-weather cruiser.
Do people take, I suppose people must take sailing yachts to Alaska.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's a big motor yacht.
Sure. This would be a great boat for Alaska. Yeah.
I can imagine sitting here with a heater on.
No, exactly.
Like closed.
Exactly. Another friend on a similar boat went down to the Antarctic and been to both poles, and just fabulous. This kind of arrangement for your upper salon and pilot house. Yeah. And then we have, of course, a lower salon, which is wonderful also. But this combination is really beautiful. Yeah. And how it corresponds with both the outside. You can see how clearly you can see and be in correspondence with the outside. And then also then you go down below to really be down below.
Now, down below, Slava and I went down below to have a look around before we started talking. And I very easily get excited about this stuff, which is why I do these videos. But Slava doesn't very often. And Slava put down there and, oh, wow. And then for the first time ever, I heard him talking about dreaming of owning a yacht and how he was going to be a cheapskate and use his friends to do the work. And And it has that effect, doesn't it, this yacht? It really makes you dream of ownership.
Yeah, well, I hope so.
So talk me through the interior.
So with the interior, you have the salon, and you can see on the starboard side, it's in a lounge cocktail format. That table stays in that cocktail format. And you have a little, in the corner there, you have a little desk area. There's a printer down below there and things like that. Although I have to say, with the technology nowadays, most people just bring their laptop or their iPad up here and their coffee or their wine, and they do it up here.
And did I see a Starlink antenna? I thought I did.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, there is on this boat. It's a little bit temporary, but with the new boat that the owner has, he just left this one and said you can rig it up how you want or get a new one. But yes, of course, and Starlink makes everything possible practically. But anyway, they have that little desk there, and then there's for cutlery and that sort of thing. And then on the other side, on the port side, what's so nice is that table can be a mirror image of the other one. So if you were having a big cocktail party or something, or you were just entertaining people for hors d'oeuvres and weren't really dining, you could have both of these tables that are above and both those tables that are below be in cocktail format.
Yeah.
But the great thing about the one on the port side is that it also will raise and swivel, and a wonderful system where the leaves are stored and just come right out. And then you can easily dine with 6 there.
Yeah.
So, yeah. You can do anywhere from 2 to 6 people there, comfortably, very comfortably, with another couple of chairs that you would just put, on the inboard side.
What about the cabins?
Really
how many cabins do we have?
So we have 3 cabins aft, and the master cabin is really beautiful, very calm feeling. Anybody can put any kind of artwork or textures or things like that, which people usually do when they buy a boat, just to make it more their own. And that will really change the atmosphere. The thing about this kind of woodwork is that if a person wants to make it very contemporary, they can, because it's very plain but very beautiful wood. Or they can, make it more traditional by putting Persian rugs and fancy pillows and other kinds of colors that make it more traditional feeling, and other kinds of accessories, right? So she has, again, a lot of versatility in how you might want to showcase the boat. And then in our case, we have 2 heads, 2 bathrooms for, I should say 2 separate compartments. And you'll see one is with the shower and then one is with the toilet, and both have sinks. So you can see that gives, again, a little bit more versatility with everything. 2 really special things we have in this cabin that I love, being a shoe person, is that one of this, you'll see here, this is a closet cabinet that's made just for shoes.
Oh, really?
And then you also have a little settee bench that comes out of the bottom of the bed, so that if you want to put on your shoes in comfort, there you can.
They've thought of everything. And then for the crew, what's the crew accommodation like?
Let me just go back
Yes,
for a minute. So, and then as far as the next 2 cabins forward, we have really wonderfully, because you don't see this so much on this sort of boat, we have a VIP cabin. So it's a double. It's a queen, actually, but it's shaped in the shape of the boat, but it's a nice ample bed. And then we actually also have a Pullman here, so that it comes down, and it's not one that's high. It's one that comes this way, so that if you had 2 people, they could sleep separately. Yeah. And one would have big boat, one would have, big bed. The other one would have a smaller bed, but you can sleep separately that way. And then the usual ensuite head. And again, the way that Jongherts are built, they have a really great setup where everything is into the wall. For example, the toilet paper is built into the wall, so it's not sticking out and getting wet necessarily at different times. And they have round, usually their showers are drained in such a way that no matter what tack you're on, it will drain properly. Yeah. All of these really wonderful, wonderful assets about them. And in fact, one of the things I'd really like to draw your attention to is that underneath every porthole of this boat is a little scupper. The whole thing, you can't even see it, but underneath where you don't see, it flows in like this and like this, so that any water, just in case it's not tight enough, flows into a little scupper that goes internally, scuppered all the way to your sump tank. It's amazing.
Do all Yongerts do that, or is
Well,
that?
they most all did, yeah, do. I mean, it is a feature of a Jonghert that I love. Now, if they're starting to make some of them not that way, that's not what I've been in touch with, but yeah, so most of them have it still. Now they are not being built now in the same way.
And again, for the benefit of viewers and listeners to the podcast who may not be as familiar with the yachting world as we are, Jonghert is one of the premier.
Oh yes,
builders.
one of the, and particularly sailboats. They did start to branch out into power boats, and they made a few of those. But really, they were so known for their beautiful work with sailboats.
Steel hull, I guess, or aluminum.
Yeah, they built either. They built steel or aluminum. This one is aluminum, partly because if you're trying to get performance, you want a lighter hull. Steel is very much a material for around the world. But now with aluminum, it's a really easier one to care for in a lot of ways.
Yeah, performance is going to be improved.
And but performance, of course, if you're getting a carbon rig, it would be silly to put it on a steel hull.
Well, that's true. That's a good point. But it's still a world cruising yacht.
Oh, absolutely. And then for the other room, you have the twins, and then you also have an ensuite head. And then we also have another nice feature, which is a day head, which is right there at the bottom of the stairs also, in case you have guests and you don't want them to have to use any of your private bathrooms. Then they have their own space to use.
I hadn't noticed that on the Reflect on board.
Well, it's a door also where sometimes that door would be for going into the engine room, but in our case, the engine room is entered through the galley, through the crew area, which is nice.
Yes, so tell me about the crew area and the galley. I liked the galley very much.
Yes, so the galley's huge, right? Very big, very ample, has everything you need. And then you have the crew mess there, which is also very nice. And then 2 crew cabins forward.
I'm going to buy it. I'm going to make you an offer.
Goody. And you can use your friends too. They'd be happy to come.
I'll have Slav as friends instead. Because they obviously know more about sailing. Actually, that's not true. Some of my closest friends have captained sailing yachts.
Yeah, great.
And it's a different world, isn't it? Sailing and motor, for sure. It's a different sort of client as well, I think, usually.
Yeah. Well, I think that one of the things from a broader context, one of the things that I'm seeing is we're actually seeing a diminishing of the market in sailboats. And I've thought about this, and we've all talked about it, of course, because so many of our brokers in Northrop & Johnson are sailors, and we've sailed ourselves, and it's like, why is this happening? What's happening? And we have a couple of theories. And one of the theories is that we don't find that the younger buyers are so interested in going with the flow, which is what you do if you're really sailing. If it's only blowing 10, then you go the speed that's 10. And if it's blowing 15, then you go faster. But you go according to the wind, right? And the weather. And what they've said is that now the younger generation buying, for example, if you're up in Newport, is that they don't want to miss their reservation at Block Island. They want something that gets them from here to there. They have their reservation, they come back, but there's no risk in anything. They have control over everything that they're doing. And so that's kind of one of the theories. I think another thing, this is a much broader context, and it's not to prove or anything, but it's something I've thought a lot about, and that is that I think in general, our society is becoming more and more isolated. Isolated from ourselves, isolated from each other, isolated from nature, isolated from our life in a lot of ways. And you wouldn't think that because we're rushing all the time. Everybody's anxious about getting it all done. Everybody's texting all the time and thinking, I've communicated 400 times today or 120 times. The problem is that it's not deep conversation, and it's not actually in community. It's not actually face to face. So what we're doing is we're communicating in a way that is it's a transaction. It's not an interaction. So if you visualize it, you're texting to maybe 20 people, to all your thousands of followers, but you're alone. And when they're getting it, they're alone. And so there's this aloneness with us and this separation. And I think we don't have the same appreciation for our relationship with nature, how we really are completely interconnected. And we really need to take care of each other. The seas take care of you, the winds take care of you. You need to know it on a sailboat in order to stay alive, right? And you're always looking at the wind and relating to the wind to put your sails in relationship to the wind to be able to go. If you don't put them in the right relationship, you're going to be in irons and you're going to be going backwards, or you're going to be broaching or something. So when you're sailing, you're much more in relationship with nature. And I actually think that that's something in the yachting world we all need to put our attention to really start paying attention to this amazing nature that's all around us. The water, the wind, the stars, the sun, all the creatures in the sea, that we need to love them. If we love them, we'll take care of them. And if we love the water, we'll take care of her. I'm thinking, how can we, in our yachting world, how can we shift to a direction where the yachting isn't just about enjoying the beautiful light and the beautiful sun and drinking champagne on the aft deck, but it's really about getting to know our world. Mary Oliver has a poem, and the first line of it is, "My work in the world is to love the world." And I think that's really important. And I think the great thing about sailboats is it gives a person an opportunity to automatically do that. Because in order to move, if you're sailing, you have to be in a relationship.
That was Annie Avery, yacht broker of motor and sailing yachts, with an amazing amount of experience and clearly a passion for both the ocean and the human race. If you want to see more of La Joie de Mer, the yacht that she was referring to, I've put a link in the description below.